Defense wins championships has never applied more to what we're seeing right now this season in the NBA. We know how skilled the NBA is offensively, but the NBA, the way it's geared, the way it's reffed, and the way these top tier dogs are playing, it'll be the fact that defense will win championships as we saw last year with OKC. And it'll be similar. Obviously the favorites right now, OKC, San Antonio, Minnesota. Detroit might actually be the favorite to win the East right now considering their matchups along the way. And these are all top dog, highly physical, highly intense defensive teams that also win games on the margins with their physicality and effort. And in this conference semifinals in the West, like between Minnesota and San Antonio, it's never been more evident just how important it is to be defensively geared. And when you talk about defensively being defensively geared, it's not just as a team construct. It's also just the stars on the defensive end that you can bring. And this is what we're going to be talking about today. This might be the GOAT defensive battle of the modern generation right now. And it's in what we're seeing between Victor Wembanyama versus Rudy Gobert. Two of the greatest defensive anchors that this game has ever seen, even though Victor's only been in the league for 3 years. But these are two guys who, like, you're looking in at least 5 years down the line, they're going to be two of the top 10 defenders in NBA history. Rudy's probably already there with his Goliath resume. And then also Victor's going to be there at one point as well. But there's a ton of novelty around this matchup. These are the two French guys, again, in that top 10 defensive talents in NBA history. Obviously, Rudy Gobert, when you talk about the resume, it's 4 Defensive Player of the Year awards, tied the record, and it's going to be 9 all-defense selections when he gets his one from this year as well. Nearly a decade of all-defense teams in the modern NBA, which is pretty crazy to me. And then obviously Victor Wembanyama, the GOAT defensive talent in NBA history, just the build, the frame, the mobility, the flexibility that he has on that build as well. And like these are two top 3 defenders on the planet. Victor's obviously the most impactful defender in the NBA right now. Rudy Gobert, whether you want him second or third, in between with Chet Holmgren. These are two top 3 defenders in the world going head to head, literally directly one-on-one with each other as their team anchors as well. And it's just super fun to watch. We've already seen from the first few games, just the rim protection dynamic versus both teams. And just to throw a few stats at you guys, like, again, these are the two of the greatest rim protectors, not just of this generation, but in NBA history. And when you go through the rim protection stats, like Rudy Gobert, in these playoffs currently, he's causing a negative 20% differential of him contesting looks at the rim these playoffs. That is fucked. And the regular season, we're talking about a guy that, in terms of team impact, he was a negative 12 per 100 possessions on the defensive end of the ball. So that's 98th percentile impact from Rudy Gobert. And then you have Victor Wembanyama. In these playoffs attempting to actually score on Victor at the rim, their shots are geared negative 22% compared to their usual in terms of the differential rate he's causing with his contests at the rim. That is probably the best in the NBA. I actually didn't fact check that part. Probably the best rim contester in the NBA for these playoffs specifically. And the regular season, again, a negative 12 per 100 defensive possessions per CTG. That ranks him in the 99th percentile of the NBA too. So these are two top dogs in terms of just like literally protecting the cup, protecting the most efficient looks at the rim in terms of whether it's Rudy Gobert's discipline and the strength that he can absorb, or it's just Victor's crazy radius of his contests as well. Both of them, in whatever manner it is, they're protecting the cup at literally all-time levels, especially for what the modern NBA calls, and especially for what the opposing teams like to do. We know San Antonio love to attack with their highly physical athletes. We know Minnesota like to do exactly the same. So these two guys, the value that they're bringing on this series on that end of the floor is relatively identical at the end of the day, and it's extremely fun to watch them battle it out, even just after 2 games. And just quickly zooming in on the first point, Rudy Gobert. How does Rudy Gobert neutralize San Antonio's athleticism and then also neutralize the Victor Wembanyama factor as much as he can? We know Rudy Gobert has the experience. He's been in this league for a long time. He's a multi-time All-Star, multi-time All-NBA guy, and we talked about the defensive resume behind him. But this is the most disciplined defensive anchor in NBA history. We just talk about vertical discipline as well, the timing, the anticipatory, and then also just the gear towards efficiency as well. Like, he will allow you to take the least efficient looks. He's going to bait those floaters, those push shots, those, floating in pull-up jumpers. And in terms of just like actually gearing towards the rim, like you won't see many guys like foul as least as Rudy does. but the vertical discipline of his shot contest is absolutely pivotal for what he likes to do for Minnesota. And in terms of the Wemby part, I mean, this is a guy that actually can stay attached to Victor for the most part, like stay attached to Wemby's movement. Like what Wemby does exceptionally well and where his offensive gravity is caused is because no one can actually move with him at that size. No one can contend with that size in general, but not many guys can even just move with that, at least with a 7-foot frame. But Rudy Gobert actually can. And then Rudy can also deny him with the size. And he has enough recovery mobility when he is beaten on the closeout, and he can actually mitigate enough of that one-on-one stuff that Wemby brings. And the thing is with Wemby, like, he doesn't really attack you out of the post. He doesn't have the same strength, the stability from his base to assert that positioning with the ball. But he attacks you as a driver. When you talk about the on-ball stuff, Victor attacks you as a driver. And again, Rudy Gobert is just a superb athlete at the end of the day. He has enough strength to be able to withstand enough contact. And again, he's just going to make Victor uncomfortable. You're never going to stop Victor and make him a 15-point per game scorer anymore. Like, he's literally a top 5 player in the NBA right now. But you can actually mitigate the scoring at least enough. And you mostly gear their scoring attack from what you get from Castle and De'Aaron Fox. And that will give Minnesota their best chance to win this series. And in terms of the pick and roll defensive versatility against any of the guards, like Rudy Gobert against whether it's Steph Castle, De'Aaron Fox, Dylan Harper, like this is one of the most active drop coverage bigs in the NBA still today. Again, we talked about the athleticism, the instincts, sometimes the hands as well, but it's also just like the efficiency geared defensive mindset. Like this guy will literally play that 2-on-1 gap to absolute perfection. His timing of those step ups, the positioning as well. His like wingspan is absolutely absurd. And again, with like De'Aaron Fox coming downhill, he's going to bait those tough floaters over the top. And again, they just become really inefficient offense at the end of the day. And it's really hard to get rhythm against a big man that great at literally milking the toughest shots for opposing teams. And then also on the glass as well, big physical frame, mobile as well. So he can actually contend with Victor's size. And in terms of just literally just securing the defensive rebounding glass, and that's what they really need to do, especially with all like how much damage the wings for San Antonio like to do on the offensive glass, whether it be Keldon Johnson, Julian Champagnie, like you need your big man to be superbly elite at that role, and Rudy Gobert is. And then the second part of it is literally how does Wemby affect the Wolves' rim attacking intensity? And like similarly, like, and what's interesting about this series and why it's such a rough watch if you love offense is that both these teams just have a lack of pull-up shooting comfort from the guard position specifically. You know, Ayo hasn't played just yet. Dante DiVincenzo is out for the season. We've seen like half of Anthony Edwards basically coming off the bench with the minutes restriction. And then obviously for San Antonio, Fox isn't in any sort of rhythm whatsoever. Steph Castle's in year 2. Dylan Harper, year 1. These aren't like high-level, reliable pull-up jump shooters who can stabilize offense like by bailing out possessions that way. And so Wemby's ability, like Rudy's in a way, but Wemby's ability to like literally saddle back on non-shooters and play that weird-looking zone where he actually does pre-switch everything. He keeps himself stationed on the corner block on weak shooters. Like his ability to do that, like that literally amplifies everything that Victor does at the rim defensively as well, being able to keep himself stationed there. And again, against a team like Minnesota where there aren't any guards attacking you with a pull-up jump shot, like you're living with Bones Highland making these pull-up threes against drop coverage, like if he can. And like you go through, like Wemby's had the Terrence Shannon Jr. matchup for a ton of the first 2 games. Like even for powerful rim-based athletes like Terrence Shannon Jr., like Julius Randle, like etc., like you can't actually mitigate his length. Like usually what people will try and do, and like maybe post bigs can do this, like you'll see this maybe with Şengün and Nikola Jokic, Domantas Sabonis, like those big physical European post-up centers. Those guys can probably mitigate Wemby's length a bit more by attacking him purely through the base and backing him down through the base. But for like these rim-based powerful athletes, they find it incredibly hard mitigating that length with their power. And it's because that contesting radius is just that absurd. And they don't have over-the-top advantages. They don't have length advantages. Like Nikola Jokic might have longer arms to be able to release that ball and release it at more ulterior angles. These guys can't do that. And that's why Victor ended up with 12 blocks in game 1 and why he's literally just dominating the rim on both ends of the floor at this point in time. And so it's just crazy, just the impact that these guys are having. And in terms of just the series outlook, like, again, this will be a relatively quick episode here, but the series outlook, like, this is a complete dogfight of a series. Like, if you love dogfight series, like, obviously we got a few from OKC last year. This is basically the same. Like, obviously San Antonio probably wins this series. Anthony Edwards can barely play this game, but the Wolves did snatch game 1. I reckon this will go to 6 at the very least. And both teams are going to be extremely tired by the time they hit supposedly OKC in the Western Conference Finals. But this series is basically going to just come down to who can actually get enough clutch bailout offense. And obviously in game 1, we saw it. Anthony Edwards has outdueled Victor Wembanyama and De'Aaron Fox and whatever they could bring in that fourth quarter in terms of just tough bailout offense, the tough pull-up shooting. And because neither team can actually buy that bucket, and Anthony Edwards might be the only guy that consistently can create comfortable pull-up jump shots because he's a superb apex athlete. San Antonio don't have that. So when these games are dragged down in the clutch and Anthony Edwards is playing, you might want to put your cards into that Minnesota bag. But if San Antonio can dominate the first 3 quarters like they did in game 2, and if they can do that enough times and avoid the clutch battle for majority of this series, like, they should comfortably win this series as expected. But again, a ton of it comes down to the dynamic of literally how both teams can protect the cup and how Rudy Gobert can also mitigate what Victor Wembanyama does as a scorer. I appreciate you guys for listening. That was just a quick little segment just on terms of if you love defense, you're going to want to tune in and fully appreciate this series that we are watching between Rudy Gobert and Victor Wembanyama. It'll be completely fun for the rest of the series as well. Obviously, it's 1-1 going back to Minnesota. I reckon they might even just split the 2 games there too. Come back 2-2 in San Antonio. Either way, enjoy the series. It's a great time in the NBA, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.